I think our biggest competitor is time. Amazon today believe for commodities is a race to the bottom.
Most of the people out there don't realize the extent of what you need to do to have any success on Amazon.
The worst thing you can do in business is hope for behavior A and reward behavior B.
When you're hiring out of necessity rather than hiring out of preparation, you can end up hiring the wrong person.
Amazon is increasingly rewarding the work you do off Amazon because Amazon's looking for brands that are brand building.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a company that works with professional services firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Josh Levine. Josh is the managing partner of Color More Lines, a boutique e-commerce consulting firm that leverages the power of Amazon and other platforms to grow brands faster. In the last 5 years, Color More Lines has helped 16 brands grow from $0 a month to $100,000 a month in the first 12 months. Less than 7% of brands on Amazon actually reach 100K a month. And then they have also helped establish brand scale from $400,000 a month to $800,000 a month. In addition, Josh is the managing director of Growth Avenue Inc., a boutique consultancy that provides data-driven business development, finance, marketing, and sales strategies to entrepreneurs and executives. He serves in board advisory roles for startup and growth companies in various industries such as entertainment, manufacturing, gaming, and technology. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to having a really interesting conversation with you, just by virtue of the fact of your experience, right? And I probably haven't done it justice there for our listeners and viewers out there, but you've obviously had a fascinating career journey across major organizations like Microsoft, Disney, and leading Amazon's professional services practice. Could you walk us through, I guess, some of the key milestones that led you to where you are today with your e-commerce marketing agency and your consulting firm?
Sure, no, happy to, and it's great to be here. So I guess we can go way back when in a galaxy far, far away, right? But at the time, I was looking to really grow businesses and help people move faster, grow faster, and build things. I always loved to build things. I started with space Legos when I was a little kid, tinkering around and building things. And then from there, just grew things. When I finished business school at UC Irvine, I was at the time working for Disney in business planning, and we were figuring out what new attractions go in the new theme park at the time, which was Disney California Adventure here in Southern California. And then I got recruited by Microsoft, and I moved my life to Seattle, and it was an incredible experience. I spent 5.5, 6 years there. I was on the Windows XP launch team. And, it was an amazing experience. I think the ability to do, it's the first time Microsoft did a sim ship of an operating system globally in however many, 150 plus countries, 50 languages. It was wild. Huge budgets, huge teams, and scale was pretty wild. So, it was a great experience. Did some partnership deals for them between Microsoft and, at the time, a little company nobody heard of called Google. There were 150 people in Mountain View, California. Honestly, at the time, they were one of 5 or 6 search engines, and they obviously blew up to what they are today. So that was a great experience. Since then, and leaving Microsoft, I've been several other opportunities, really in the startup space, 5 or 6 different startups overall, really got hooked on that space. And I think, had some good successes and then have some horrific failures, right? And I think in life, you learn most from your failures than your successes, right? We can talk another time, maybe over a pint in London around, taking preferred share class on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley and what that actually can do to an organization if you're not careful. But at the end of the day, it's been a great journey. The last role I had prior to co-founding Color More Lines about 8 years ago was I was VP of Business Development for a startup in Santa Monica doing cloud brokering between AWS and Azure. Literally, they'd be able to copy paste workloads from the different platforms, so there's no switching costs. And then from there, we were acquired by a computer science company, which merged with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, at a 180,000 person company at the time. I got to run the AWS practice for them, working directly for Mike Lowry, who's the CEO at the time, former IBM head. And it was, again, another incredible experience. And when I was vested, I left. That was several years later, but it was great because I got to meet all the people at Amazon. Got to meet Andy Jassy, got to meet Mike Clavel, the entire team. These are amazing people, and I had a great ride working super closely with Amazon for several years, and then spun out and co-founded Color More Lines, and the rest is history, as they say.
It's such a fascinating story, and I love the fact that you've clearly had a very colorful journey to where you are today, to say the least. But talk to us then more about Color More Lines. Obviously, Amazon, there's a lot of things nowadays you see about Amazon FBA, starting a brand on Amazon. You can make money quite easily on Amazon, or they say, or you say you watch YouTube videos or a TikTok clip is like, I made this much in this time. Talk to me more about what you do at Color More Lines and how you help brands go from the 0 point to that 100K a month point in the first 12 months.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. And the bottom line is it's not easy. Okay. In 2015, frankly, it was easy. You could literally resell vitamin C from China, put a white label on it, throw it in a box, send it into Amazon. At the time, you didn't even need to have a verified purchase to write a review of a product, right? And there were maybe three things you need to do on Amazon. And if you did one or two of the three things right, you could close your eyes, just throw product in there and make a ton of money, right? But those days are long gone. They're over, right? Now, 2015, there's probably 25 things you need to do on Amazon, and you need to do 23 of 25 things if you're going to make money. Is Amazon today believe for commodities is a race to the bottom, right? You have pressure from, just Amazon's basics and just a lot of just commodity type brands out there. And so if you're selling a commodity, we would not recommend that, right? So what's working well on Amazon today are highly differentiated products with unique selling propositions, value props, patents, unique entrepreneurs with origin stories about something, special, unique to the market, something disruptive. That's what's really working well in Amazon. I'd say that why we're successful today, to answer your question, in helping 15 brands go from 0 to 100 grand a month in 12 months, it is a big feat. I mean, like you said, 7% of brands on Amazon break 100 grand a month in the US, right? It's really a white glove service. So what clients are coming to us with is the ability to timeshare a team of 50 people basically at a fraction of the cost of what it would take them to build out that team on their own. So we're talking about marketing and finance and business development and sales and listings and crisis management and creative and market intelligence. And they're just getting a slice of all those team members, and they're all experts. My business partners have been on Amazon since the company started. Some of them are ex-Amazonians even, and the team is an incredible team. So you're getting an A team of people at a fraction of the cost of building it out on your own. And so it's really takes two to tango, really. One, you got to have the right firm. And yeah, sure, we're the right firm, but if with the wrong product, it's just not going to work, right? So finding that right company, a right entrepreneur, right business is critical. And the other thing I'll say that's really important for entrepreneurs out there and businesses is just the investments they're making off Amazon right now are absolutely critical to having an impact on the A9 algorithm. Right? Amazon is increasingly rewarding the work you do off Amazon because Amazon's looking for brands that are brand building, right? They're not looking for, the Amazon only brand or the commodity things that we've talked about, right? And Amazon frankly doesn't want to lose either, right? So their social cues are going out there to say, hey, how are you doing on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok? And do you have influencers? And do you have affiliate marketing? And do you have a PR firm? And what's your social presence? And then they're using a lot of that data to figure out how to rank you inside Amazon.
Sure. I think that's a really interesting point there because I'm pretty sure most of the people out there don't realize the extent of what you need to do to have any success on Amazon. And then from what you've just said there, 2015 you can resell a vitamin C pack from China, and now you're having to do 25 different things to even have any success in there. What are some of those 23 to 25 things that you would really need to be looking at to build a brand and have that success in selling on Amazon?
So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of it's a great question. I mean, a lot of pre-work has to be done even before calling us. And if not calling us, building out your own Amazon team, right? It's like the worst thing you can do is pour gas on a fire that's not really burning right or the wrong fire, right? So it really starts with value propositions, right? And understanding what the right value prop is, what's differentiated about your product, what are the points of parity and what are the points of differentiation relative to the alternatives that are in the marketplace today. That's critical. And look, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we all in business would lick our finger and go, 50% of our marketing works and 50% doesn't. We have no freaking clue what half is working, right? But, what you're not going to do is stop pumping it. Because if you stop spending, you don't know which half is working or not, and you can really screw up a business. But in today's day and age, there's no issue. We actually pay a lot of money for these first party and third party tools to be able to show exactly what somebody's sales are on Amazon, right? So we know just based on the category size, how big is that category? Let's say you're in the pet supplement space, for example, and you're selling, I don't know, a joint health product, right, for dogs. I mean, we know exactly how much money is transacting in joint supplements for dogs. We know who all the top competitors are. We know exactly how many units they're moving, what are the reviews, all of that information, right? And that's critical information to have prior to launching. And so the other thing I'd highly recommend is that there's some focus groups that are done ahead of time before somebody decides they want to launch on Amazon or even launch a product in the marketplace, right? The cool thing today is, at least here in the United States, you want to do a focus group even 5-10 years ago. Get ready to spend $50,000, head to New York City. You can do an in-person focus group and all the song and dance and dog and pony show, and maybe you get good data, maybe you don't. Well, with today's day and age, you can get data points for $3 a click and get a representative sample of 100 different data points through third-party services to be able to test your product and competitive products even before you launch. Meaning literally all you need is a JPEG of what your product looks like, right? Without even printing a package, and throw that up against the number one, number two, number three competitor, right? Get several hundred data points, which would be representative of the population you're going after. And I tell you what, it is super sobering to see those results.
Yeah. Wow, that actually reminds me of something that's really interesting. One of my favorite podcasts is Diary of a CEO, and the founder there, Stephen Bartlett, the host of the show, he talks about A/B testing thumbnails and things like that, and it talks about how they'll run ads on those thumbnails and get the data points on what is the best and most receptive, what the audience is most receptive to, and that will be it. And that strikes me as what you say there. It's like having that data point and those data points against your competition and what is going on gives you the best possible chance for success on the platform, right? So really, really interesting. How has your experience at Amazon, your own and your team, as you mentioned, some of them are Amazonians, how has that helped in creating a leadership team that helps e-commerce clients? What is it that they've brought to the table that allows you to serve your clients successfully?
That's a good question. I think, a lot of it has to do with cultural fit, right? And coming up, understanding what are the kind of, Microsoft will call them core competencies, like, anybody at the end of the day could be taught Visual Basic or C# or a coding language, but the more softer skills or the things or the core competencies are harder to teach, like intellectual horsepower. Somebody's smart or they not, like dealing with ambiguity. Does somebody have the ability to work in ambiguous situations? What are somebody's cross-group collabs? Do they play well with others, right? Some of these softer skills are critical things that we hire on and build a team culture around, right? So and so that dovetailing is super critical because these teams are working so closely together with clients. So, I think the cultural aspects is what really holds the team together. I mean, the technical skills are here. The team's incredible, right? In fact, everybody is so specialized. There's nobody today that can tell you they're an expert in all things Amazon. I'm sure not. I'm less of an expert in most things than I am in some things, right? And anybody that's not humble enough to realize that, there's an issue right there, right? It's like, but we think about like some of the subject matter experts we have, specifically, let's say on the advertising side of things. Our ad team's off the charts and they're purposely driven. So they've built that deep skill set in advertising, understanding everything there's to know about PPC and DSP advertising on Amazon, but we've worked as a company and as partners to round those people out, ensure that we're bringing the right people to the dance that are going to play well with others, that have a bias for action, that are going to work on behalf of the customer. And I think the other reason why this works is, I've always used to say that, and I still say, that the worst thing you can do in business is hope for behavior A and reward behavior B, right? And that typically happens between clients and professional services firms, where it's like, hey, professional service firm, we want you to produce results, but we're going to pay you a flat retainer no matter what you do. And then there's service firms like, that's great. I'm going to lock you into a multi-year contract, and then we're going to do nothing. And we're going to perform on 23 of 24 when we're not going to get the renewal, and you're going to be pissed, and we're going to be pissed, and there you go. That's just a broken model, right? So if you can ensure that you are hoping for behavior A and you're rewarding behavior A, meaning the incentives are aligned financially between those two organizations, and then the incentives for the leadership team and the people on that team cascade down from what the clients actually pay. So it's super clear that the better the clients do, the better the company does, the better the people do. I know that sounds so basic, but I've worked for tons of organizations where it's complete misalignment, right? And we all have.
Without a doubt, and I completely agree with you in understanding that model. It is a broken model in understanding that when incentives aren't aligned, it can prove to be not helpful for either organization in the long term. And I always say, build for the long term, not the short term. That means that the partnerships you have need to be the right partnerships. They need to be aligned with incentives, as you say, and there needs to be a win-win scenario for everyone, right? And so I think that's a really interesting point you mentioned there. Having built teams in the different scenarios and in different circumstances, what's your approach to talent acquisition? You've obviously brought in some really great talent into your own organization, so you've got some real experience here. What's your approach to talent acquisition for a service-based business?
Wow. It's a great question. I have to tip my hat off back to kind of Microsoft and Disney days, which had some incredible pedigree grounding for a lot of the people there that kind of built those programs and systems. I just have mad respect for it because I learned a ton there. I actually worked in MBA recruiting when I was in the Windows group at Microsoft, not because I was in HR, but because we were building teams, right? So they would send us out to do MBA recruiting, and they would really, frankly, beat it into our head, right? Kind of these recruiting philosophies that really helped, right? And Disney did the same thing. And I'd say that the biggest takeaways I've learned over my career is, and some of these, might sound trite, and you've heard these before, but, fire fast, hire slow. Okay, great. You've heard that before, but what does that really mean? Well, fire fast is easy, right? You have a seed of doubt. Okay, you can put somebody on a performance improvement plan. Hopefully they get better. And a lot of times people will, and a lot of times they don't. So that's easier part to deal with. The hire slow, it's like, well, what does that really mean? I think in a lot of organizations I've worked for, sometimes they'll actually hire somebody without a job description actually being written out. I know that sounds so basic, but it happens. I've been in organizations like that. We're hiring for this role, but it's not super clear on the role, or it might be a boilerplate that's sitting on the internet, but it's not really clear, what the details of the job are, what are the success metrics, and how that person is going to be measured right up front. So I think it's laying the table out first is critical. And then once you do that, it's coming up with the anatomy of an interview and an interview process that makes sense, right? So the other thing I'd say is, when we get to the anatomy of the interview in a second, but that interview loop itself needs to be with enough people, right? Typically it should have 3 to 5 people in an interview loop, right? Especially in the more senior the role, the more people. I mean, there's been some roles that I've gone for, especially at large organizations, where I've had 9 to 11 people interview me, right? That's really a Microsoft Amazon type way of doing things. And a lot of HR between Microsoft and Amazon's gone back and forth. So they're pretty similar. But a lot of organizations, there's long interviews. But even in a 5-person interview loop, let's say, that's one way to really effectively know whether you really want to hire Josh or not, right? And if we're all interviewing me in that sense, the simplest way we've done that as a best practice is you focus on core competencies. Those 5 people are going to test 5 separate things. One might be testing, is Josh smart or not? Does he deal well with ambiguity? Does he play well with others, right? Can he handle the technical skills of the job, right? And then maybe the last person is testing cultural fit, right? Is he going to work well in this organization or not? And if each one of those people are laser focused on a 45-minute interview on that one core competency, that's going to be key. And I think the other thing where things fail and break down is people do these interviews in a vacuum, and then the feedback doesn't get rolled up in a cohesive way to the frankly as appropriate, which is the person that comes in as appropriate to make the final decision whether we're going to hire Josh or not. That would be the ultimate hiring manager. So then what happens is a couple of weeks go by, the interviews happen, and it's like, well, I kind of remember this out of his interview, but not really sure, right? So I think the other thing is the anatomy of that interview, like actually starting with a candidate and letting them know, hey, we're going to do a 45-minute interview. I'm happy to give you a little background on the job. Then I want to ask a bunch of questions, and we'll leave some time at the end if you have any questions about me, the company, right? And get their buy-in. But really keep it to 45 for the simple reason that last 15 minutes should be spent writing up your notes to the as appropriate and all the interviewers on the loop. And that feedback goes to everybody.
Sure.
And so I think that's critical. And then the other key thing is keep it short and sweet in a template that makes sense. Typically what we do is straight up, we require every interviewer to say hire or no hire right out of the gate, like the first line of that email, right? It's like, let's be real clear, right? I want to hire or not hire. And then what are the strengths and weaknesses to support your decision? And then you can put at the end any follow-up questions you want other interviews to probe. Hey, I didn't get a chance to test your technical skills or their marketing skills. Can you follow up on that? If it's tight like that, then the probability of hiring quality people goes way up.
I absolutely love what you said there, and I think that some our viewers and listeners can really take some lessons right there and then. A simple thing of let's not mess around when you're reviewing, providing feedback. That hire or no hire, go straight into it, and then vindicating your decision. But also the fact that you have a structure of having a clear outline of what these interviews should be, what you should be doing in those interviews, and it's not just okay, we go in, let's get a feel of this person. There's one interview or two interviews. It's like, okay, you might have five people interviewing the same person on different competencies. So I think that's really interesting, and I've not heard that in any of our podcasts so far. So that's a really great insight.
One other thing that I think is really important is that I forgot to mention. On that interview feedback, it should say straight up the candidate's name, right? The position they're going for, right? The core competency that interviewer is testing, right? And then hire, no hire. That's right out of the gate, and then the reasons to leave. That way, the person that comes in as appropriate at the end, the final decision maker knows that you interview Josh for this specific role and you tested this skill set and this your feedback. Then they can pull all that together across all the people and look at it as a single set. And then the final thing I'll say, just to wrap on this, is that if there is a seed of doubt, it's a no hire, right? And people will always, and I've made that mistake how many times now, right? We all have. It's like, well, that's not as important, but I do have concerns on this person and they don't really play well with others, but they got such great skill sets. I'm going to bring them in the company. And then, bam, cultural mismatch.
So it's such a very important lesson that most founders and entrepreneurs will learn at some point. It's like when you're hiring out of necessity rather than hiring through preparation, you can end up hiring the wrong person, which ends up being a bigger cost in the long term than anything else, right? If you know in advance, okay, we're going to be working and getting these deals over the line, that means I can bring this person into the business that can handle these types of things, and you're well in advance of in that hiring phase. You can go, okay, you got time to build a pipeline of ideal candidates, right? But if let's say someone has left, a high level executive in the team or the high team member has left, and you're going, okay, well, I don't know what to do, I wasn't prepared for this, and you're scrambling, you can really be looking for the wrong type of person or anyone that fits the mold to jump in, and there lies the problem, right? And there can be the issue. I want to talk to you about a very topical topic that a lot of people are talking about, and I like to touch on it in every podcast, and that's the two-letter word AI, right? It's exceptionally topical at the moment since OpenAI brought out ChatGPT, and obviously it's very early days, but I really wanted to get your thoughts on AI. How do you see AI reshaping the professional services landscape, as well as any other landscape that you see over the next few years?
Yep. No, it's a good question. All of a sudden, it's funny to look at LinkedIn. Everybody's in AI. It's amazing. Everybody's in AI.
I thought this.
Their bios have completely rebranded. I'm now the AI expert, everybody. Look at me, right?
Yeah.
It's funny to watch this, right? But I mean, in all seriousness, I think there's absolute, of course, value to AI. I use it every day in my life. I think we all do. I think, frankly, if people aren't using AI, you're at a huge disadvantage relative to your peers, in the marketplace today. I also don't think it's a panacea, though, where it's just something that you just turn on and you're done and everything's fine, right? Because it's also can be quite dangerous, right? Because if you set it off to do the wrong thing, right, you can also have problems. And look, people talk about Rufus and some of the AI that's going on relative to Amazon, and we know, I won't mention names, but competitors and people that are heavily laying into a lot of the AIs out there. But you got to be careful. I'll give you a perfect example, right? You let AI start writing your listings on Amazon, and they get your supplement wrong, that all of a sudden you should be taking 3 capsules 2 times a day, not 6 capsules 5 times a day or whatever. My point is, things can mess up quite quickly that can have drastic effects, right? Sure. So I definitely think it's an enabler, no doubt. And I think it helps teams come together. And I also think when there's language barriers as well, we have an international team of people around the world, and that really helps, especially if your native language is not Spanish or English or Japanese or whatever it might be. There's some really cool things that you can do grammatically to kind of upscale you to the next level, where my Spanish is decent, it's not great, and if I need to do something, it's so nice to be able to run something through a filter to make sure I didn't screw up a verb tense or something like that. So I do think it's an accelerator. I do think it's something that can collapse time for people in business. There are so many great courses that are out there. Everybody and their mother's pitching something on Facebook and Instagram and, and all the usual suspects. But I think every industry, there's value to using AI to leverage to grow faster. And then the caveats of just being careful of the results. And there's also a confirmation bias that I've seen happen with AI a lot. You tell it what you want, and then it just tells you, oh, you're pretty and beautiful. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not what we asked you to come solve,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting. We've all got tons of problems. It's funny because I've got this little, you can't see it. I don't know, it's blurred out, but it's this like multi-page cheat sheet on all sorts of like prompts to ask AI, right? And all the best plugins and all this kind of stuff, right? And I just keep it on my desktop because I use this stuff all the time. But I think the best prompt that I ever learned from somebody, I forgot who it was prior to asking something, you want to know something about a business, let's say. You ask the question, whatever question. But at the end of the question, you always ask, is there any other information you need to know from me to provide me with the best possible answer? So simple. And then all of a sudden, rather than the AI tool just spouting off a bunch of, whatever, verbal diarrhea, you can kind of come back and it'll come back to you and say, oh, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. Well, I would really need to know these 7 things to really give you a good answer on your original question. And then I'm like, wow, I should have asked it that. And then I ask those 7 things and then I get a really good answer. So that's my biggest hack that I've learned.
That's really interesting, and that last bit that you said there is something that is definitely a lesson that listeners and viewers can take away, especially if they're utilizing AI in their own organizations. Primarily because we had a guest previously that described AI as a digital psychopath, right? It will tell you what you need to hear, it tells you what you want to hear, it has no emotion behind it. It demonstrates all the behaviors of a sociopath or a psychopath, and it will sometimes even lie to you to give you the answer that you're looking for, right? And so I love the fact that you've essentially, with that one line, essentially gone, okay, well, think about what you've just said. Now tell me how you can make what you've already said better and more accurate. So it's definitely something that's actionable for our viewers and listeners there. I want to touch on you touched on earlier Amazon's AI Rufus. I want to talk to you, or I guess ask you, what are the opportunities currently that you're seeing on Amazon? And that might be with Rufus, it might be something else, but what are you currently seeing as an opportunity in Amazon? What are the challenges people are facing on Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, it is really a shopping assistant. That's really what it is. And, I think early days, there was a lot of rule-based marketing and collaborative filtering that came out. I'm talking like 15, 20 years ago,
Sure.
which is kind of the early precursor, in my opinion, to a lot of this kind of stuff. But, really, all that Rufus is, it's like ChatGPT, but it's really helping you, shop faster and shop smarter, right? And it's correlating Amazon's got one of the best, obviously, repositories out there on everything they need to know about me, all the things I like, all the things I don't like, everything. I mean, it's just, think of it as an AI tool. I mean, we don't, this is really for the consumer, not for us as an agency, but as a consumer, it's just going to help you answer product-related questions that you have. I'm a beginner, I'm ready to go on, a camping trip, or I'm deciding whether I want to buy, these 2 different iPhones and which one should I buy and why, or I'm buying a skincare product and I have oily skin versus dry skin, which one should I do, right? So it's really around product discovery and then helping you kind of cull down, just like ChatGPT, if you're trying to decide on 2 products, pull out all the information from the Amazon listings and sift through user reviews and give me the information that's going to help me make a better informed decision, right? And especially around, review summation and all that, right?
Sure. It makes a lot of sense. And I guess every single platform is now trying to bring their own kind of AI to make their platform a little bit more easy. And they don't want everyone to just go to ChatGPT. They want them to stay on platform, things like that.
That's right.
Makes a lot of sense. In terms of then, what does an professional services team look like for Amazon? And I'm sure that there'll be listeners out there going, okay, well, you're an Amazon expert. How does that help me as a professional services firm? What does that look like?
You mean if it's a professional service firm that's looking to build out like an Amazon expertise?
Exactly.
Sure. I mean, it's hard work. I'm happy to share. There's plenty of meat on the bone, as they say, meaning there's so many people out there that can use help. It's so funny. People say, I can't believe you talk to other Amazon agencies, and isn't that competitive? And the reality is, why do you think they clump gas stations on one corner? Because there's plenty of fish in the sea, right? And it attracts more fish, right? So we share all the time with sister agencies on kind of best practices and all this kind of stuff, because there's, you kind of lift the boat, the tide rises for everybody when everybody gets better, right? So I mean, it really depends. I mean, if you're talking about a professional services organization, let's say within a large company that's trying to build out a core competency, there's several key things that you need, right? You're going to need a listings and crisis person that really understands Amazon Seller Central or Amazon Vendor Central, that can run the front end and the back end of those listings. That's copy, that's creative, that's, all the keywords, all the tagging, all the categorization, basically how all that works, front end and back end, right? You're going to need an advertising person. You're going to need an advertising expert in PPC, pay for performance advertising, and then DSP, which is Amazon's demand side platform, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but sometimes you don't check out with something on the internet, and then all of a sudden that ad follows you around the internet to go back to that shopping cart. Well, nobody does a better job of that than Amazon, right? And so that's a whole separate targeting platform they have. So you need an ad expert who's really good on those two pieces. And here's the reality. Like I said earlier, I'm not an expert in all things Amazon, and anybody who says they are, not being straight up. The person that's going to be the ad expert is most likely not going to be an expert in crisis management and listings on Amazon. They're separate people, right? Cool. Same thing goes for, they're going to need a creative person, right? That person's obviously does all the creative things, video, photography, videography, chopping everything up, making things look nice, and not just making things look pretty, but understanding, what works and doesn't work on Amazon, what's actually going to convert, right? And then the other key role, I'd say, is a market intelligence role. The world's changing so much. So you do need a data analytics kind of number crunching. Maybe that's a market intelligence / finance person. Maybe it's a one role in a smaller business, or it's separated in another organization. But the market intelligence person is the person that's literally scouting out ahead and saying, guess what? This category is collapsing. We need to come up with new products to fish where the fish are, because everything's moving this way. Right? And that takes time depending on development cycles for products in the category you're in. So that's a critical role. And then the final role, like I was mentioning earlier, is just specifically around, finance, just measuring what matters, right? Sure. And making data-driven decisions.
Sure. I love it. Love it. And I think that's some real insights there. Clearly, you say you're not the expert but you clearly know what you're talking about. So this part of the podcast we like to call the Entrepreneur's Room, and it's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to allow our viewers and listeners to understand how business leaders and business owners think and operate. So the first question we like to ask at this stage of the podcast to all of our guests is, how are you currently spending your days as the leader of the business?
See, that's the biggest risk, and you've hit on the question that I think is the most important. How do you spend your days as a leader in the business? I mean, I think our biggest competitor is time, right? At the end of the day, right? So I think what I start doing is just like you would do, let's say in a sales cycle, is called pre-call planning, right? But looking at that on your business, like pre-call planning is critical when you're on a sales call, let's say, because you want to be able to understand who the customer is, what are the details, what are the pain points, how are you going to go approach this, and you write out a plan prior to approaching. But I don't think people pre-call plan to their day sometimes, right? So I think, having that same mentality, for me anyway, has helped me a lot. So one of the things I start with is time blocking throughout the week, right? So I only open up my calendar under certain times to take meetings, and then I purposely built in time in my calendar to get work done, right? Because otherwise, the classic Eisenhower 2x2, right? So it's like the danger is we just spend all our time in the urgent and important bucket, or the urgent and not important bucket, but we never spend the time in the not urgent but important bucket. That's quadrant 2, right? That's where we got to spend the time. And it's like, if I don't do that time blocking and say, look, I'm only going to be able to take this many calls throughout the week, because what happens is we just open up our calendars, all of us could be booked completely 100% of the time. And then what happens is there's no time, there's no family life, there's no time to take care of your health. It's just 24/7, 7 days a week. So time blocking first, I know I said that like 3 times, but there's nothing more important than that, right? And then once those time blocks are set, I think one of the important things is just managing action. Like, how do you manage? So you now have this time block, let's say, is not for customers. That's for you to get work done, right? You need to write a critical proposal or deal with an HR issue or whatever you're doing. Like literally taking that task and copying it and pasting it into your calendar in the amount of time it needs to do it. So you know, like, hey, I need to spend 30 minutes on this, scheduling the time. So I think the other danger I fall in trap to is to say, okay, I've got this half day, which is just my time, right? But you know what happens? That just goes in 3 seconds, and it's like squirrel, and you get distracted, and you're doing 7,000 things, and you're like, man, I had a terribly unproductive day.
I absolutely love what you just said there, and I've been recently I've been time blocking more so than I'd ever been, just to try and get more productive with my time, and I found it's insanely more. Even if I'm putting in time to go to the gym or to time with the miss, blocking out those times as well to be able to give myself the best possible chance to get work done, but also focus on that non-urgent element of things, non-urgent but needs to be done.
Yes. And here's another hack I'll take. And I don't know if this was Bill Gates at the time or Steve Ballmer back when, but I remember an announcement coming out when I was at Microsoft. It was like, kind of like, maybe it's just a divisional thing, but like, we were not allowed to have 1 hour meetings. It was the smartest thing they ever did. It's not acceptable. Like, you could schedule a 45-minute meeting, and the idea was what you can do in an hour, you can get done in 45 minutes. And what you can do in 45 minutes, you can get done in a 30-minute meeting. What you can do in 30 minutes, you can actually do in a 15-minute meeting. And meetings start on time, literally on time. Like, if people in the room are not, meetings start, right? And that's another, like, that sounds pretty crazy, but it really collapses time. And I've taken that principle today. Like, we don't have hour meetings at our company. It's either 30-minute or 15, 30, or 45-minute meetings. That's it. But what's cool is it doesn't sound like a lot, but if there were hour meetings on your calendar, you get 15 minutes back times every meeting you have per week, per month, per year. There's literally several weeks of productivity you get back to do other things.
I think I've seen a clip of Jeff Bezos specifically saying how you start every meeting, it needs to be short and it needs to be on time, and there needs to be an agenda for every single meeting in Amazon to make sure everything is there. And everyone spends time going through the agenda before the meeting so that the meeting itself is productive in itself. So I think that's a great little hack there. So in terms of then as a leader, obviously you watch specific things in the business and you track specific things, and from the sounds of things you're a very data-driven person. What metrics are the most important to you when running the business?
That is a great question, and we've spent a lot of time pulling together data points and kind of metrics that matter for us. I mean, it depends what metrics you're looking at. I mean, what I like to spend most of my time, frankly, is looking at the health of our clients.
Sure.
Because if your clients are taken care of and they have healthy businesses, guess what? You're going to have a healthy business. Now, if you have a leaky boat and your expenses are out of control and all that's messed up, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think the first thing to focus on is not your own business, but your clients' businesses, right? How are they doing financially? What are they actually paying you? Can they afford to pay you what your rates are given where their business is today? Look, I'll tell you, a lot of our businesses have been turned upside down by these tariff wars. People are getting squeezed like grapes where they can't afford to sell products anymore on Amazon because of what's going on. And I'm just going to leave that where it's at. That's a fact. If we're tone deaf to that and don't realize that we need to have some flexibility in terms of what we're charging clients relative to where their business is today, then just get ready to get 30 days notice if you're a professional service from a client. Not because they don't like you and not because they're not doing great work. It's just they simply can't afford you. So looking at their P&Ls first is number one, and what is their EBITDA, and what is, how are they actually, tracking things, and are they profitable and growing their business? Second of all, once your client portfolio is healthy, right? Then you got to look at your own business, obviously, right? And the metrics we look at internally, obviously we look at EBITDA and we have a target for that as a professional services firm, right? We also look at expenses very clearly. On a quarterly basis, there's a scrub of literally every expense in the business, and can we dedupe, right? So sometimes what happens is, and we recently went through a merger about a year ago, you get double software expenses, let's say, where two separate groups were paying for the same software, or all of a sudden now two things come together. So guess what? You can now go up to a better tier, and it's monotonous and it's painful and it's drudgery work. But the reality is, like, having a clean view of the business, all expenses, quarter over quarter. The second thing is we always look at, like, what are the runaway expenses? And every professional service firm is different, but most professional service firms is actually the people, right? Yeah. And so understanding the ratios of the amount of clients that you can bring on board as a ratio to the number of people you need to service those as a service organization is critical. If that ratio gets out of whack just a little bit, It can have a drastic swing on the profitability of this professional service firm, as we all know, right? The second thing we like to do is kind of double click on that. We look at productivity of the actual people. Now, we're not a law firm. We don't bill every 6 minutes or get that crazy, right? Okay. But what we do want to know is this person putting in a full work week, by the way? And if they are putting in a full work week, amazing. What are we getting out of that work week from them? And what are our clients getting out of that work? And one of the ways to hold accountable is to stop working in the business and occasionally spend time working on the business. So one of the things we do is we do biannual reviews. And that's something that's very atypical in our space, at least in the e-commerce space. A lot of professional service firms do this and a lot of them don't. Why? It's a lot of work, right? You could spend 100 hours preparing for this. But if you do that, then you can set the metrics for your clients around what matters. And if you do that biannual review on your own company, guess what? Same thing. You can set those KPIs and adjust as the market adjusts.
Love that. There's so much actionable insights there and so many really interesting points you've mentioned there. In terms of then, how are you currently growing your business in terms of what business development activities are you currently running? What specific sales and marketing activities are you doing to grow the business?
That one's always challenging in our space. And I think it's challenging for professional service firms in general, because it's not like you can just give them a punch card for yogurts and your 10th yogurt is free, right? It's like, it's a different type of model, right? And there's a level of professionalism has to happen, and you kind of have to undersell to sell, if that makes sense. Meaning, if we work on being thought leaders in our industry, which we do, we all get out there and we speak at different industry events, and you authentically speak from the heart, and you just tell, whatever it might be, you give a nugget to a group of people that's super valuable, not expecting to get anything back, but you genuinely just want to add value to the industry. Guess what happens? It's amazing. People come to you and go, that was so helpful, so useful. We really appreciate that. We'd love to have a conversation. So I think one of the biggest things that we do is just try to get our name out there in an authentic way, okay? We're not doing spammy stuff with social media. Like, we don't even have a lot of the typical handles that a lot of other companies would have, or we don't even invest any time in it, right? The one that we should invest some time would be LinkedIn. We honestly don't, though. All of our business either comes through referral, taking care of our happy clients, making sure they're happy and they refer other happy clients, or getting out there in the industry at industry events, mastermind groups, forums, and sharing our knowledge. And from there, people will refer into you, right?
Love it.
And one other thing I'll say too, again, we're not running, a churro shop or a yogurt shop where it's high volume, right?
Yeah.
And neither are most professional services firms, right? Depending on their client avatar, who they're going after. So it's like, we're not that hungry in a sense that, right? We are blessed to have a full practice. Life is good. Of course, we want to add more clients, but we want to do it in a strategic and methodical way, like most professional service firms. And there's also a danger if we don't keep that bar high, like we talked about interviewing. Same thing with clients. If the clients don't meet that bar, it's better to pass on that client, because you're going to bring them into an organization and they're eventually going to churn out.
They're going to churn out and they're going to make your life a lot more difficult in the process, because you can't necessarily provide the value that you would otherwise be able to provide.
Yes.
I think that's a really great point you mentioned there. Final question that I like to ask all of our guests at this stage of the podcast, the end of the podcast, it's, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
You're asking me the same question I ask our clients, and they always struggle with it because it's a tough one. I mean, how many wands can I have? How many times can I wave the wand, right?
Yeah.
I think, there's a lot of wands, right? But let's just pick one, right? One of them, if one problem I could solve, would be just to ensure that clients understand that being successful with a product in business on Amazon has part to do with Amazon, but mostly it has to, if you have the right shop, of course, right? But it mostly has to do with the pre-work, the pre-call planning work we've talked about, like the pre-game work ahead of time to make sure that the value props are right, that it's the right fit for the right marketplace, and they're really treating it like a proper brand that they're building in the marketplace, right? That they're looking at their business holistically and not wondering why sales on Amazon aren't just going up automatically, but they're directly correlated to the work that's being done off Amazon, on social media, on the work they're doing on, whether it's PR, advertising, or affiliates, or influencers, or whatever it might be, and that there's a direct cause and effect. I know that sounds so basic, but we've worked with Global 2000 firms as clients that don't get this, and we've worked with entrepreneurs that are just, startup smart group of guys and gals that also don't totally get that, right? So that's one of 10 that I would wave.
Fantastic. Well, Josh, that was an absolutely fantastic conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought you shared some really great insights. And so thank you very much for that. For our viewers and listeners listening, and if they ever wanted to reach out to you, where would they go to find you?
Yeah, sure. They can just reach out on our website at colormorelines.com, and they can just fill out the contact us, ask for me, or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Anything we can do to help, we're always here.
Well, I'll put all the details in the description of the podcast. But again, it's been an absolute pleasure, Josh. Thank you very much for sharing your time today.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this. All right. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.